Welcome to Sweeter Than Honey. Today's daily devotion is from Genesis chapter 7. In Genesis chapter 7, we still in that flood time. Remember, we had talked from chapter 6 that the water was coming, the flood was coming as God's judgment on man's corruption and the thorough sinfulness and depravity of man. As we come into chapter 7, there are three sections to this chapter. First of all, verses 1 through 9 discuss the entering of the ark. That is, it comes right in. Chapter 7, verse 1 starts with the time when Noah has finished the ark and they're ready to go in. Then verses 10 through 16 describe the flood itself, and 17 through 24 is a summation of the flood and its devastation. Going back and looking at these verses, verse 1, the Lord said to Noah, "Go into the ark, you and your household, for I have seen that you are righteous before me in this generation. Take with you 7 pairs of all clean animals." Here, remember that the general discussion, the general command was to take 2 of every living creature. But of the clean animals, they were to take 7. The reason for this is because their diet and their sacrifices, their religious sacrifices, would come from the clean animals. And so you have 7 taken from the clean animals, whereas only 2 from the other types of animals. And then he continues, verse 4, 7 days. In 7 days I will send rain on the earth 40 days and 40 nights, and every living thing that I have made I will blot out from the face of the ground. And Noah did all that the Lord commanded him. Verse 6 describes Noah as being 600 years old. He's brought all these animals in, and they're ready to go. And you get there, he's 600 years old, and he and his family have all entered the ark. In verse 16, it says the Lord shut him in. There was going to be this massive flood, and for the purpose of devastation and judgment. And God was going to exercise this judgment upon the corruption and the depravity of man. And as Noah goes into the ark, God shuts the door. The significance of that God shut the door is, one, is God's intervention, is his safety upon Noah. Also, in the coming days, as the flood comes, as the people begin to realize that Noah was not just this crazy man building a boat in the middle of nowhere, but that this flood that he predicted, that he preached about, will actually be coming, undoubtedly there will be people banging on the ark, begging to be let in, and the psychological difficulty of Noah, if he was the one to shut that door, but instead it's God that shuts the door. And it's God's the one who exercises the judgment, not Noah. The flood starts, and it says, it describes the waters above and the waters below. In the waters above and the waters below, that there are fountains that were described, rivers, and they are coming to the surface, and then there's rain that comes from the sky. Noah's sons are named Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Those 3 are going to be very important, and later on, particularly the line of Shem is going to be very important. Noah enters the ark. The flood continues 40 days and 40 nights. The water covers even the mountains by 15 cubits. Then everything outside the ark dies. Whether it drowns, whether it's the pressure of a flood coming against people, or trees cracking and falling on, everything dies. Notice in verse 4, you see God as you read God say, "I will send rain on the earth 40 days and 40 nights, and every living thing I have made I will blot out from the face of the ground." Then verse 23, describing what God has done. He blotted out every living thing that was on the face of the ground, man and animals, creeping things and birds of the heavens. They were blotted out. So 3 times in this chapter that word, that phrase, blotted out, occurs. And then at the verse 24, the final verse of the chapter, the waters are on the earth for 150 days, approximately 5 months. That the earth is flooded, everything comes to a standstill. In fact, they're the only people left, and that's where they are. Think of the quiet, the solitude that they would have experienced. There are times where we look at a solitude like that and we think, oh, if I could only have that. But there had to be an eeriness about the quiet that lasted that long. And they have the animals there, but it's just them, and they're cooped up inside this ark. Large as the ark may have been, they were in that confined space for some 5 months. And that's where we'll pick up in chapter 8. There's so much that we have to think about with God's judgment on sin, the fact that he does judge sin, and that there comes a time where his judgment is not simply talked about in a theoretical or spiritualized manner, but that it comes in flesh and blood judgment, that there are people who die, there are people who are in pain, and there is eternal judgment, eternal punishment that they experience because of their sin. Sin is a real thing, and it causes God's judgment. It provokes God's judgment, and God's judgment on sin is a righteous thing. May you have a good day as you continue. May God bless you and keep you and cause his face to shine upon you and give you peace.